Hello, this is Vudani, and I'm going to show you a build that I played quite a bit during Beta Weekend 2. It's an Elementalist staff build, and it's going to focus primarily on AoE pressure, but it's still going to be pretty effective in 1v1s. The build is going to be applying boons to you quite often, specifically the Fury boon. First off, I'll talk about the gear you're going to want to use with this build. For Amulet, I prefer the Soldier's Amulet with a Berserker Jewel. You can also opt to just use a Berserker Amulet, but you really don't need the crit. You're going to be getting that from Fury. For armor, you're going to want the Runes of Rage, and this is pretty much the key to this build. This is what makes it work. It's going to enhance your crit as well as your Fury. And for the weapon, I prefer Sigil of Superior Fire, simply because for AoE, that's going to be better than the Air Rune. As for traits, Arcane Power is going to obviously help you switch attunements, and Elemental Attunement is the first trait you'll pick up. That's going to apply an extra boon every time you switch into a new attunement. It's going to give you Might for Fire, Swiftness for Air, Protection for Earth, and Regeneration for Water. The other trait you'll pick up is Blasting Staff, and that is probably underappreciated by most. The extra AoE really will add quite a bit to your damage. With Air Magic, the crit obviously is always a bonus, regardless of how much you're going to already be getting, but for the first trait you're going to get Tempest Strength, and you're pretty much always moving. If you're not moving, you should move for this trait. For the second trait, you'll get Aeromancer's Alacrity, and it's not particularly useful. However, it's probably the most useful you can get at this point. It's decent because Static Field as well as Windborne Speed are on fairly long cooldowns, and you're going to want to pop those every time you go into the Air Attunement. The last one, Zephyr's Boon, is another key part of this build. What it's going to do is whenever you apply an aura, you're going to gain Fury and Swiftness. These buffs have pretty decent duration, so they're going to help keep buffs up quite often. For Fire Magic, I prefer Burning Precision over the flat 10% gain, simply because you're not always going to be in fire. It will be one of your higher attunements, but the chance to burn on any critical is really useful. Burning does a decent amount of damage, and it's almost always up. The last one, Fire's Embrace. When you activate a Signet, you're going to get an aura, and that's going to trigger the Air Magic Zephyr boon. That will give you Fury as well as Swiftness, so it just makes a lot of sense. I'll talk about utility skills now. The first one, for your heal, you're going to want the Signet of Restoration. First of all, it's a Signet. Second of all, it's a very solid heal. Should make a lot of sense. If it doesn't, you better think about it. For the first utility skill, Mist Form, very powerful. If you've played an Elementalist, you will understand the use of this thing. It's really invaluable. If you're stunned, you can use it, and that is the key. When a warrior comes at you or a rogue comes at you, they're going to stun you, and if you don't pop this, sometimes you will literally die. For the next one, Signet of Fire, it's a pretty decent burn. It's not too good, but it is a short cooldown, and it's useful to put into your rotation if nothing else, and it's going to apply buffs, so that's the main reason. Signet of Earth is also a Signet on a short cooldown. The Immobilize is actually a pretty long Immobilize, and this is really going to help you get down some of those channeled AoE effects. For your ultimate, I prefer Tornado. I don't know, in my opinion, Tornado is probably the best for an Elementalist. You can use this, and if you have high health when you use it, you'll be able to do quite a bit of damage to whoever you're fighting, whether it be a 1v1 or a huge group fight. It's going to do a lot of damage, and the knockback is incredibly useful. Now I'm going to go over how you should generally use each of your attunements. I'll start with Fire. This is pretty much your highest damaging attunement, and that is going to come from Meteor Shower mostly. It's a higher cooldown spell, and it takes a while to channel, and that's why you have Signet of Earth to immobilize people. You also have other abilities that will help you channel that, or if you're not being focused, you just rain hell on whoever. Burning Retreat, pretty self-explanatory. If you need to get out of there, use that. Flame Burst is a good damage spell, a good filler in between Meteor Shower and your last spell, Lava Font. Lava Font is very effective. It's a pretty fast cast and it starts damage almost instantly. And that's gonna be, I'd say, the most common spell you'll use to kill people. The auto attack with fire, not that amazing, but I mean, if you're gonna be using multiple lava fonts, then Fireball will be a decent filler. For water, you're really only gonna switch here for a couple seconds most of the time, and in those seconds you'll drop an Ice Spike and Frozen Ground. Ice Spike has a huge AoE range, and it does take a second to drop, but if you put it right, you'll either force your foe to retreat or it will hit them. The vulnerability, not that great, but it is 3 stacks, so it will add maybe 5% damage tops. Frozen Ground, obviously chilled, is incredibly useful. It's going to help you kite, and for ranged it's going to make them worse. For the healing spells in the water here, you got Geyser and Healing Rain. Both of them are decent. I mean, you're not going to have much healing, so they're not going to heal that much, but if you are in a situation where you need to heal, you can use those. Healing Rain is pretty good for group fights. You can drop that down if you have the chance. With the air attunement, Static Field is by far the most useful skill here and one of your best skills you have. It's going to do some damage as well as put a pretty good stun on people. It's going to help create distance as well as lead into new attacks. Windborne Speed, obviously a good swiftness buff, and when you switch into this attunement you'll apply swiftness to everyone around you, so it's a good attunement to go into when you're switching points or moving around. Gust, obviously the knockback can be very useful when used right, and Lightning Surge is another pretty strong attack. It's going to cause blindness, so it's definitely a skill you'd use when you switch here. And the last attunement is Earth. Shockwave is very useful. A little bit of damage, a decent bleed, and it roots. And in that root time is a good opportunity to use Eruption, which does actually a very significant damage bleed. As for utility, you got Magnetic Aura, which is going to reflect projectiles. And not only that, but it is an aura, so it will give you Fury and Swiftness from Zephyr's Boon. Unsteady Ground is going to drop a little wall of Cripple. That's a good spell to cast in front of you as you're running away and create a barrier for melee. And that about wraps it up for how the build is played, what you need to do. If you want to see this game unedited with some commentary, feel free to click the annotation here. Also, I'd appreciate some feedback. Let me know how I did, let me know what you want to see, and I'll try to do it. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.